"I never expected anyone to notice," Jack Miller muttered under his breath as he stepped onto the soggy porch of the old farmhouse, the smell of wet wood mingling with the crisp morning air. Rain dripped steadily from the eaves, forming small puddles in the uneven ground below, each one reflecting the dim light of dawn. He pulled on his worn work gloves and adjusted the faded baseball cap shielding his eyes from the drizzle. The farmhouse had stood empty for years, a skeleton of peeling paint and broken windows, yet to Jack it represented more than just a project. It was an opportunity to do the right thing without expecting anything in return. He glanced down at his son, 7-year-old Liam, who clutched a small toolbox almost as big as he was, his wide eyes filled with curiosity and determination. "Ready, buddy?" Jack asked softly, and Liam nodded, his tiny hands tightening around the handles. Together, they climbed the creaking wooden steps, each footfall echoing against the silence of the abandoned structure. Jack ran his hand along the rough surface of the porch railing, noticing the faint traces of paint from decades ago, imagining the stories of laughter and life that had once filled these walls. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, not just for the house, but for the lessons he hoped to instill in his son: patience, diligence, and compassion. The wind picked up, rustling through the broken shutters and whispering secrets of forgotten days, and Jack drew a deep breath, inhaling the earthy scent of damp soil mixed with old timber. He set down his tools, kneeling to inspect a particularly stubborn board that had split and warped over the years, and began to carefully measure and mark each cut. The sound of pencil on wood was quiet but deliberate, a rhythm that matched his steady heartbeat, teaching Liam that focus and care mattered even in the smallest of actions. Jack's thoughts drifted briefly to the bills waiting on the kitchen counter back home, the rent that needed to be paid, the groceries that were dwindling, yet none of it deterred him. Here, in this quiet moment, it was about the work itself and the silent promise of kindness embedded in each repair. A sudden gust rattled the loose window frame, and Liam jumped, his small body trembling slightly. Jack reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, whispering, "It's okay, buddy. We're making this place better, one step at a time." The boy's eyes met his father's, filled with admiration and a budding sense of responsibility, and Jack felt a swell of quiet pride. Around them, the farmhouse seemed to breathe in response, each creaking beam and rain-drenched plank part of a larger story of resilience and hope. Jack wiped the rain from his brow, straightened, and with a deep, steadying breath, lifted the hammer, feeling the familiar weight and balance in his hand. He tapped the first nail into a sagging board, the metal biting into the wood with a soft, satisfying thunk, and the sound echoed through the empty rooms like a promise. As that first rainy Saturday came to a close, Jack and Liam moved in harmony, leaving behind a solidly repaired porch step. Over the next 4 weeks, their weekend routine became a silent anchor. Every Saturday morning, regardless of the weather, Jack and Liam returned to the farmhouse. Jack Miller stepped back one morning, wiping his hands on a rag, and looked over the steady progress they had made since they began. The farmhouse, though still battered and worn, had begun to take on a sense of order and care, each repaired window and straightened board a quiet testament to patience. Liam stood nearby, carefully arranging nails in a small tin, his small fingers learning the rhythm of careful work, and Jack could not help but smile at his concentration. The rain had slowed to a fine mist, leaving a fresh earthy scent that filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of sawdust and damp wood. Jack felt a gentle warmth in his chest, a subtle reminder that these efforts, though unseen by the world, were shaping more than just the old house. They were building character, respect, and dignity in both father and son. He gestured toward a sagging fence in the backyard, and Liam followed, eager to continue, their movements synchronized like a quiet dance. Jack instructed him patiently on how to secure the boards properly, emphasizing care over speed, and each measured action reinforced the lesson of diligence. Between tasks, Jack paused to share stories about the house, imagining the laughter that had once echoed through its halls, and he noticed how Liam listened intently, absorbing both the work and the narrative. The clouds began to break slightly, letting thin rays of sunlight pierce through, illuminating the worn surfaces in a soft golden hue, and Jack felt the transformation in the atmosphere as if the farmhouse itself was slowly awakening. The wind carried whispers of leaves and distant birds, a reminder of life continuing beyond the fence, yet here, in this small corner of the world, time seemed suspended, allowing room for growth and reflection. Jack reflected on his own upbringing, recalling moments of quiet kindness from strangers and mentors that had left lasting impressions, and he realized he was now passing similar lessons to Liam, silently teaching him the importance of grace, humility, and helping without expecting recognition. As he tightened a hinge on the back door, Jack glanced at the structure as a whole, noting how each repaired element created a subtle ripple effect, improving not only its stability but also the aura surrounding them. Liam, noticing his father's pause, mimicked the careful movements, and Jack felt a sense of pride that went deeper than any tangible reward. Afternoon light grew warmer, stretching shadows across the yard and highlighting the small improvements they had accomplished, and Jack's heart swelled with the quiet satisfaction of knowing they were doing meaningful work. He stepped back once more, breathing in the mingled scents of rain and timber, feeling the faint tremor of hope and possibility in the air, and he silently resolved to continue, understanding that patience, persistence, and quiet courage could turn even the most forgotten places into spaces of dignity and renewal. Every hammer strike, every measured cut, every gentle word spoken to his son reinforced the unspoken promise that goodness endured, that grace could flourish in unnoticed corners, and that the smallest acts, performed with sincerity, had the power to shape both people and the spaces they touched. The late afternoon sun filtered through the broken shutters, casting long golden streaks across the floorboards, and Jack Miller paused for a moment to absorb the quiet beauty of the transformed space. He ran his hand along a newly repaired beam, feeling the smoothness where rough splinters had once threatened to tear at his gloves, and a soft smile touched his lips. Liam, sitting cross-legged on a rug they had carefully cleaned and laid down together, was carefully arranging a row of old books they had discovered in the attic, brushing dust from each cover with meticulous care. Jack watched him, the scene unfolding like a gentle lesson in responsibility, teaching patience without uttering a single command. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the lingering scent of aged wood, creating an atmosphere that was both comforting and nostalgic, a bridge between past and present. Jack adjusted his cap against the warm sunlight and noticed a small garden patch in the backyard where he had planted marigolds with Liam earlier in the morning. Their bright orange petals swayed lightly in the breeze, proof that growth and care could manifest even in forgotten corners. He reached for a hammer, tapping lightly against a loose board in the kitchen, and the rhythmic sound resonated through the space, blending seamlessly with the distant hum of cicadas outside. Each movement, precise and deliberate, conveyed a sense of dignity and grace, a quiet affirmation that actions carried meaning beyond recognition. Liam looked up from his books, eyes wide with curiosity, and asked softly, "Dad, do you think anyone will notice our work?" Jack crouched beside him, resting a reassuring hand on his shoulder, and said gently, "Sometimes the right things are done without anyone watching, but that does not make them any less important." The boy nodded, understanding more than words could express, and returned to his task, inspired by the silent lessons of integrity and kindness that surrounded him. Shadows lengthened across the room as the sun descended, highlighting the careful repairs on the walls and ceiling, each one telling a story of quiet perseverance. Jack stood at the center of the kitchen, surveying the work with pride tempered by humility, aware that this was not merely about restoring a house, but about cultivating a space infused with respect, hope, and the subtle power of generosity. A soft breeze wafted through the open windows, carrying with it the sounds of distant birds returning to their nests, and Jack inhaled deeply, feeling a sense of connection to both the land and the life it sheltered. The day had been long, filled with small challenges and moments of reflection, yet every effort had been a step toward something greater than the physical repairs, a testament to the enduring value of quiet dedication. As the light shifted, illuminating the corners they had touched, Jack felt the gentle satisfaction of progress, of lessons shared, and of a promise kept to his son and to the spirit of this old farmhouse, a promise that kindness, diligence, and grace would never go unnoticed by those with eyes willing to see and hearts willing to feel. As the sun dipped lower toward the horizon, Jack Miller tightened the last screws on a cabinet door, the the soft clink of metal against wood echoing through the kitchen. He stood back and wiped his brow with a damp cloth, surveying the changes that had taken shape over the day. Liam was perched on a stool by the window, arranging a few wildflowers they had gathered from the overgrown yard into a small jar, their bright colors contrasting against the faded interior. Jack smiled, noticing how his son's careful placement of each stem mirrored the attention to detail he himself had poured into every repair. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the scent of earth and blooming flowers inside, and Jack felt a quiet satisfaction settle over him, the kind that comes not from recognition but from knowing one has acted with integrity and care. He moved to the porch to examine the newly repaired steps, tracing his fingers along the smooth surface, imagining the first visitors stepping cautiously onto solid ground rather than creaking boards. Liam followed, eyes wide, and Jack offered a gentle nod of approval as the boy tested each step with careful precision, learning the balance between caution and confidence. The light outside softened to a warm amber, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, each tiny particle glinting like a fleeting reminder that every small act could catch the eye in the right moment. Jack paused to adjust a loose shutter, and for an instant, he allowed himself to envision the house filled with laughter again, with voices and footsteps replacing the silence that had long hung heavy. The feeling was fleeting, yet it strengthened his resolve. He knew that what he was building was more than wood and nails, it was trust, respect, and the subtle weaving of hope into the fabric of a neglected place. Liam reached out to brush a cobweb from the corner of the porch, and Jack caught his hand, gently guiding him, showing him how attention to detail could transform even overlooked spaces into areas of care and warmth. Each movement was deliberate, each instruction quiet yet purposeful, embedding lessons in humility and generosity without needing to speak loudly. The soft chirping of crickets began to rise as twilight approached, blending with the distant rustle of leaves, and Jack felt the rhythm of the evening matching the rhythm of his work, steady, patient, and thoughtful. He glanced around, seeing the incremental progress manifesting not only in the structure but in Liam's posture, in the confidence reflected in his son's eyes. Jack realized that the day's efforts were teaching more than carpentry, they were imparting values, a silent inheritance of character and grace. With the porch repaired, the garden neat, and the small details attended to, Jack felt a quiet pride, a sense of accomplishment grounded in purpose rather than applause. He leaned against the railing, inhaling the cool evening air, and watched the shadows stretch across the yard, knowing that each measured action, each moment of attention and care, had quietly shaped both a home and the hearts within it, leaving a gentle imprint of goodness and quiet dignity in its wake. Jack Miller moved quietly through the living room, his hands tracing the edges of freshly sanded window frames, feeling the smoothness where rough surfaces had once threatened to splinter. Liam followed closely, carrying a small container of nails and screws, careful not to drop a single one. The late afternoon light filtered through the clean panes, casting soft rectangular patterns on the floor, highlighting the subtle improvements they had made together. Jack stopped for a moment to breathe in the calming scent of sawdust mingled with the lingering aroma of rain from earlier in the day, feeling the satisfaction that came not from recognition but from the act itself. He glanced at the old fireplace, its bricks now carefully scrubbed and lined neatly, imagining family gatherings long ago, and he felt a deep connection to the lives that had once passed through these rooms. Liam began arranging small hand tools on the counter, and Jack knelt beside him, demonstrating how to keep the space organized, the rhythm of their movements creating a quiet harmony between father and son. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves in the trees, carrying faint sounds from neighboring farms, a reminder that the world continued beyond the boundaries of the old farmhouse, yet within these walls, a sense of purpose and calm persisted. Jack moved to the kitchen sink, checking the repairs he had made to the faucet and counter edges, satisfied with the careful precision that transformed the space from neglected to functional. He noticed Liam examining a small crack in the floor. As they knelt together to seal it, Jack glanced through the clean window pane and noticed the distant glint of a dark sedan parked by the edge of the property line, its driver watching them silently from afar before slipping away. Jack didn't mind, it didn't change his purpose. Together they worked to seal it, the act teaching patience, focus, and the value of doing work properly, even when no one is watching. The sunlight shifted slowly, casting longer shadows that stretched across the walls and floor, illuminating the care and attention evident in each repair and adjustment. Jack felt a quiet pride, a gentle satisfaction that came from knowing he had not only restored parts of the house but also shared meaningful lessons with his son about diligence, responsibility, and compassion. He paused to listen to Liam hum softly as he worked, the melody blending with the gentle creaking of the floorboards and the distant hum of farm life beyond the property. Jack adjusted a shutter to catch the last of the evening light, its hinge now smooth and steady, and he reflected on how each small act of care, whether sanding a board, tightening a screw, or teaching a child to place tools carefully, could ripple outward, creating an atmosphere of respect, dignity, and quiet hope. The day's labor had been steady, measured, and thoughtful, yet it carried a weight of purpose that no words could capture, filling both father and son with a sense of accomplishment and the subtle knowledge that goodness, performed sincerely and without expectation, leaves a lasting mark on both spaces and hearts. As Jack straightened up and took a step back, he observed the living room in its renewed state, noticing how sunlight danced across every repaired surface, and he felt the comfort of a day well spent, a day defined not by accolades but by quiet determination and enduring grace. Jack Miller paused at the edge of the newly repaired porch, taking in the view of the yard bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, the colors of the small garden and freshly painted shutters blending into a serene tableau. Liam crouched nearby, carefully aligning a row of pavers along the walkway, his hands steady as he followed the lines. His father had drawn, and Jack marveled at how naturally his son had adopted the patience and care that had guided their work all day. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the old oak at the corner of the property, carrying with it the subtle fragrance of wildflowers and damp earth, and Jack inhaled deeply, feeling the calm that came from being fully present in the moment. He ran a hand along the railing, noticing the smoothness of the freshly sanded wood, the way each stroke of care seemed to reverberate through the space, infusing it with quiet dignity. Liam glanced up at him, eyes bright, and asked softly if they would finish the attic next, and Jack nodded with a gentle smile, encouraging the spirit of curiosity and initiative that he hoped would remain with his son for years to come. The farmhouse, though still old, now radiated warmth and attention to detail, each repaired element a silent testament to the dedication that had been poured into it without expectation of recognition. Jack moved toward the small tool shed at the corner of the yard to retrieve more supplies, the wooden steps creaking softly under his weight, and Liam followed, carrying a light hammer with careful hands, their movements creating a rhythm that seemed to harmonize with the natural sound surrounding them. Sunlight shifted as it descended, casting elongated shadows across the freshly raked soil, highlighting the meticulous repairs on doors, windows, and fences, each one reflecting the quiet pride Jack felt without needing to voice it. He paused to adjust a latch on a gate, the metal now smooth and steady, and felt a subtle sense of satisfaction knowing that their work would provide not only functionality but also a message of care and respect for anyone who might enter. The air was filled with the soft, familiar sense of wood, paint, and garden blooms, each inhalation reinforcing the connection between effort and result, between intention and tangible change. Liam hummed softly as he worked, arranging the last of the pavers in the sun-dappled yard, and Jack watched, aware that these moments were shaping not just the farmhouse, but also the character of his son, instilling lessons in diligence, quiet perseverance, and the enduring power of kindness. As the day began to fade into evening, Jack straightened up, surveying the entirety of their accomplishments, the house. Transformed by countless careful touches, and felt a profound sense of grace and satisfaction, knowing that their labor, though unseen by many, had cultivated a space imbued with respect, hope, and the subtle magic of quiet, persistent goodness. Jack Miller stood in the backyard, the golden hue of the setting sun reflecting off the freshly painted siding of the farmhouse, and he felt a quiet sense of completion settle over him. Liam, sitting on the steps with a small notebook, was sketching a map of the yard, marking the flowers and the repaired fence lines with careful precision, his brow furrowed in concentration. Jack watched, appreciating how the child's imagination had been nurtured by a day filled with intentional work and silent guidance. The air was still, save for the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze and the distant calls of returning birds, and Jack inhaled deeply, savoring the mingling scents of sun-warmed wood and garden blooms. He moved to adjust the gate latch, its hinge now operating smoothly, the metal glinting softly in the light, and he reflected on how every small act of care had accumulated into a transformation both tangible and subtle. Liam looked up at him with eyes wide, filled with pride and admiration, and Jack offered a gentle nod, a silent acknowledgement of the lessons being absorbed through observation and shared effort. The shadows lengthened across the yard, and Jack traced the outlines of the freshly repaired roof and window frames with his gaze, noting how the sunlight highlighted the meticulous attention to detail, emphasizing the dignity embedded in every stroke of paint, every tightened screw, every carefully aligned board. He walked slowly along the perimeter, checking the progress, each step measured and deliberate, conveying patience and precision, and teaching Liam that meaningful work often required quiet persistence rather than haste. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of earth and late-blooming flowers, and Jack felt a resonance between the rhythm of nature and the rhythm of their labor, a reminder that care and patience could shape both environments and character. Liam carefully placed a final row of small stones along the edge of the garden bed, and Jack crouched beside him, offering quiet guidance without taking over, allowing the child to experience accomplishment firsthand. The farmhouse, once abandoned and forlorn, now radiated warmth, attention, and quiet dignity, each repaired corner a testament to the transformative power of consistent effort and unseen generosity. Jack paused, resting his hands on his knees, and looked out over the yard, imagining the house filled with laughter, light, and life once more, feeling a profound sense of grace and fulfillment that stemmed not from recognition but from the silent, steady work of improvement and the passing of enduring values to his son. As the final rays of sunlight faded, illuminating the soft dust in the air and casting gentle shadows over the repaired spaces, Jack stood and straightened, his heart full, knowing that the day's labor had created more than just repairs, it had cultivated hope, character, and a lasting impression of care, perseverance, and quiet dignity that would linger long after the last nail had been driven. Jack Miller heard the sound of a vehicle approaching down the gravel driveway, its wheels crunching over the scattered stones, and he instinctively paused, his eyes narrowing toward the edge of the property. Liam, still crouched by the flower bed, glanced up with curiosity, sensing the subtle shift in energy, and Jack offered a quiet nod, signaling him to remain calm. The truck came to a gentle stop near the porch, and a figure stepped out, silhouetted against the fading sunlight, walking toward the house with a purposeful yet unhurried gait. Jack's heart quickened slightly, a mixture of anticipation and measured composure settling over him, and he straightened, brushing sawdust from his jeans, preparing to greet the visitor. As the figure drew closer, Jack recognized Emily Carter, the owner of the farmhouse, and the driver of the sedan that had been observing their quiet persistence over the past month. Her expression was a mixture of deep respect and awe. Emily's lips curved into a gentle smile. "I've been watching you too," she said softly. "I inherited this place, but never had the strength to bring it back. What you've done is a miracle." She produced a folder, setting it carefully on the railing. Jack's gaze followed, calm and measured, as she opened it to reveal an official, long-term property management contract offering Jack a handsome, steady stipend to oversee and restore the rest of her family's historic estates in the valley, an offer far beyond anything his struggling bank account could have expected. Yet he did not move quickly or speak out of anticipation. Instead, he allowed the moment to settle, feeling the weight of recognition and generosity without allowing it to overwhelm the quiet principles that had guided his day's work. Liam shifted beside him, curious and slightly wide-eyed, and Jack placed a steady hand on his shoulder, offering a reassuring squeeze, silently teaching patience, humility, and the importance of accepting grace with gratitude rather than excitement. Emily stepped closer, her voice soft yet firm, explaining the significance of the offer, the value of what they had accomplished, and the intention behind the generosity, each word measured, reflecting respect for the effort and character displayed. Jack nodded slowly, a gentle acknowledgement of both the gesture and the moral weight it carried, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment that transcended material reward. The sun dipped lower, bathing the house and yard in a warm amber glow, and the shadows stretched long across the repaired porch, the neat rows of flowers, and the freshly sanded railing, each illuminated detail echoing the silent perseverance and care invested. Liam glanced up at his father, sensing the gravity and yet the calmness in Jack's response, and he mimicked the steady posture, learning from observation the manner in which grace and dignity can be embodied in moments of acknowledgement. Emily continued to speak, her tone carrying respect, admiration, and the quiet acknowledgement of unseen labor, while Jack remained grounded, letting the act of kindness wash over him without distraction or excessive emotion. A gentle breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of flowers and warm wood, and Jack inhaled deeply, aware of the rare and fleeting nature of such moments, where effort, character, and recognition intersect perfectly. As the final rays of sunlight fell, casting a soft glow across their faces and the restored farmhouse, all three paused, letting the silence convey what words could not, the quiet triumph of integrity, the enduring power of kindness, and the grace that comes from doing right without expectation. In that shared silence, Jack felt a profound satisfaction, a resonance that affirmed every careful stroke, every patient hour, and every subtle act of generosity, leaving an indelible impression on both the house and the hearts of those present, a moment where dignity and grace were celebrated without need for embellishment or applause.